There are a couple of different widgets in the Android SDK that you can use to display lists of data. An older component named ListView that's been part of the SDK since Android's early days, and a newer component named RecyclerView that was introduced in 2014. I'll start with the ListView component and then show you RecyclerView in a later video. I'm going to first describe how to display a simple list of strings, and then I'll expand that to more customized displays of complex data objects. I'm working in a project named ListView. As with the previous exercise, I have a sample data provider where I'm getting the data from, and in my main activity, I'm working with just a single object right now. I'm going to comment out a good bit of this code. I'm going to get rid of all of the references to the TextView object that I named TVOut, and I'll also comment out the code that's sorting the data collection, because again, I'm just going to work with a simple string set now. Now I'll go back up to the top of my activity class, and I'll add another field here. It'll be a list again, but this time it'll contain simple string values. And I'll give it a name of item names, and I'll immediately instantiate it with new array list. Then I'll go down to my for each loop, where I'm looping through my data. For each item in the data item list, I'll pass the name of the item to the list of strings. So I'll say item names.add, and I'll pass in item.getItemName. Now I still want to sort the data, but this time, because I'm working with simple strings, I don't need to use a custom comparator. I can simply call collections.sort, and I'll pass in item names. And now my data is sorted and ready for display. Next, I'll go to my layout file. I'll get there by clicking on the related XML file icon, and I'll choose activitymain.xml. I no longer will be using this TextView component, so I'll get rid of it, and I'll replace it with an instance of the ListView. I'll set the width and height to match parent to make the ListView expand to fill the entire activity, and then I'll use an intention action and collapse the ending tag into empty tag syntax. Now the ListView component needs a unique ID so I can reference it from my Java code. I'll add an ID attribute at the top, and instead of using my own custom ID, I'll use a standard ID that's included with the Android SDK. So I'll start with @Android:, then I'll pass in ID/list. Now you don't have to do that. You could just as easily have your own custom ID, but this is just a habit that I've gotten into from using the ListView for a long time. If I look at this layout file in design mode, I'll see a preview that shows a mock-up of what it might look like at runtime on a particular device. Now I'll go back to the main activity class. In order to display data in a list view, you use a class called an adapter, and specifically one named ArrayAdapter. The ArrayAdapter's job is to cycle through the data and then, as needed, create view objects that represent list items, that is, rows in the list, and then pass the data to those list items so they're displayed to the user. I'll create an instance of the ArrayAdapter class from Android.widget. Notice that ArrayAdapter takes a generic declaration, just like list and map. I'm going to tell this ArrayAdapter that it will be managing string values. And I'll name the ArrayAdapter simply adapter. And I'll instantiate it with a call to the ArrayAdapter's constructor method. Now, there are a number of different constructors here. I'm going to use the third one on this list that takes a context, a resource, and an array of strings. The context will be this for the current activity. Next, I'll pass in a layout resource ID. This is the layout that's going to define how the data is presented to the user, and it will represent a single data item from the list. I could use my own layout file, or I can use a layout file that's included in the Android SDK, and that's what I'll do here. I'll reference android.r.layout, and then I'll see that there are a whole bunch of different layout files available. I'll start by typing the beginning of the word simple, and I'll see simple list item 1, simple list item 2, and then a bunch of list items that have things like checked and multiple choice. I'm going to keep it very simple. I'll use simple list item 1, which is a layout file that has a single text view component. And then I'll pass in my data objects, and it'll be item names, my list of strings. I'll close up this code a bit, and now I have my array adapter. Next, I need to bind the adapter to the list view. I need a reference to the list view object. I'll create a variable named list view, and I'll name it list view, and I'll get its reference by calling findViewById, and I'll pass in the resource ID in the layout file, which I set as android.r.id.list. If you used a different ID, use that ID here. And then I'll cast the result as a list view object. Finally, I'll bind the two objects together with listview.setAdapter, and I'll pass in the adapter object. And now I'm ready to test. As the activity comes to the screen, I'm extracting the strings from the collection of complex data objects to create a list of simple strings. Then I'm using the adapter to pass that data directly to the list view. And there's the result. The user can now scroll up and down to see all of the data, and it's in alphabetical order because I sorted the data before I passed it to the list view component. Now, if you're wondering what that list item layout file looks like, it's very simple to look at it. Hold down Control on Windows or Command on Mac and just click into the ID. And that'll take you directly to the layout file, and you'll see that there's only one view or widget in the file, a text view component. It has an ID of text1, but all of the hard work is being done automatically for you, passing the data to each instance of this layout file and displaying it in the application as a scrollable list.